Hello, boys and girls, and every beautiful being in between. I'm Malli, and this is my friend Sako. Sako, say hi to everybody. Hello, boys and bitches. Oh, Sako, it's such a beautiful day. Maybe we can sing a song with our new friends. Maybe Sako can sing, but who do you think you are, bitch? Mariah Carey? More like Mariah can't carry a note. Waka, 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 waka. Tone deaf ass bitch. Waka, 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 waka. Sorry, friends, it seems that we've had some technical difficulties, but now that we're back and hopefully more respectful this time, Sako can give us the word of the day.
Malli?
Yes, sweetie?
Is Sako okay?
Yes, Sako's fine. Sako just fell. Sako, give him the word of the day. Wowee, boys and bitches, the word of the day is codependence. Waka, 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 waka. Okay, thank you, Sako. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the 2025 film Together as suggested by these lovely subscribers here. We have our main characters, Malli and Tim, who have been together for nearly 10 years, and you've probably gathered from the word of the day that Malli and Tim are in a codependent relationship. And although codependency is the overall theme of the film, we will be breaking down Malli and Tim's relationship just overall, because why not? We meet Malli and Tim at their going away party. It seems that they're moving from the big city to the country for Malli's new teaching job. And while we're at this party, we kind of get an idea of Tim and Malli's dynamic just based off of the conversations that they're having with their friends. Based off of Malli's conversation with her friend Kath, it seems that Malli and Tim's sex life is not thriving. So much so, Kath is encouraging Malli to leave Tim and to find a new man in the country. But despite Kath's opinion, Malli is defending Tim, saying that he's been going through a lot lately, which is why they haven't had sex in months. Cut to Tim's conversation with Jordy and Luke, who also happens to be Malli's brother. We find out that Tim is an idle musician, aka unemployed. And it just so happens that Luke and his band are going to be going on tour, and he offers Tim to join them as a guitarist. Tim tells Luke that he's going to talk to Malli about him potentially going on tour, and Luke is disappointed, and it seems that he's not very fond of Tim and Malli's dynamic. And he tells Tim something on the lines of, when I die, I don't want somebody else's life flashing before my eyes. And I was like, damn, God forbid he wants to run it by his girl before he goes off on tour and shit. And you can tell that Tim is bothered by Luke's comment, so immediately he agrees to commit to coming back into the city for rehearsals and agrees to go on tour. We also find out that Tim is financially dependent on Malli, and we find out that he doesn't have a driver's license, and Malli is ultimately their transportation. So if Tim wants to go somewhere, he pretty much has to rely on Malli in order to be able to do so. Tim and Malli have gathered their friends. They're giving kind of a farewell speech, and Tim expresses that he's very excited about their next step and their new journey, and is very encouraging of Malli and her career. So behind Tim, Malli is down on one knee. He turns around. Malli is proposing. I said, bitch, if you don't stand the fuck up. So Tim sees Malli, everybody's watching, and Tim at first is he kind of chuckles. He thinks that it's a joke, which I can't blame him. She doesn't even have a fucking ring. Malli is telling him no, it's not a joke. She's dead ass down on one knee proposing. And once Tim is oh shit, she's fucking serious, he looks horrified. And so he hesitates, and Malli is oh shit, he's saying no. She stands up, she looks embarrassed, and then Tim gives this very awkward, very delayed yes, of course, of course. Everybody awkwardly claps, and it's just not, I hated it. I got secondhand embarrassment. This scene bothers me for a number of reasons, because one, if you're doing a public proposal, if I witness you publicly proposing to your partner and they say no, I'm going to assume that y'all have not discussed marriage or discussed anything about taking the next step. I do think that surprise proposals are cute. This. I just don't think that the surprise proposal should be the first time that y'all are discussing when y'all should be getting married and when y'all should be getting engaged. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Does that make any sense? I kind of feel that should be a discussion beforehand. So then when you do propose to somebody, y'all know you've already had this conversation. That's where we're headed. That's where we're going. That's what we're doing. But the proposal itself can be a surprise, because I feel there's just a discussion that needs to be had beforehand. Okay, where do we see ourselves as individuals before we get married? I'm sure Tim is looking mortified, because it's damn, he's nowhere where he wants to be with his music career. In his mind, he's probably wanting to get that shit together first, and then, take that next step. Because like I said, as of right now, Malli is taking care of them financially, and that could be something that he wants to establish before they take that next step in getting married. And it's I can somewhat get Milli's perspective too, because I'm damn, 10 years? Damn near 10 years? And I hate to say that in a heteronormative way, this scene kind of bothers me a little bit. To each their own. You know what I mean? If I see a girly pop proposing to her man, and he says yes, and they embrace, and they love each other, and they live happily ever after, how could I not love that for them? them. That's amazing. I just feel like me personally proposing to a man is just something that I wouldn't do. And this could be completely different, especially culturally and what era you grew up in and shit. So it's like, take it with a grain of salt. This is just what I've witnessed. I feel like marriage for women for a really long time was presented as like this super glamorous thing and something that women are encouraged to do. Where I feel like with men, it's kind of like, oh shit, bro, your dick's gonna be locked up for life, bro. Are you sure you want to do that? Like, it's not like super hyped up for men. Like, I'm over here talking about like, I would never propose to a man. I don't even know how I feel about marriage in general. I'm not sure how necessary it is to be legally binded to somebody. Before a certain time, I want to say 1960 something, you as a woman, you have to be married to have a bank account, but I'm like, I gotta do that shit on my own. And then it's like, even with the concept of marriage being like a union of two people, like I feel like you don't necessarily need to be legally binded. Like I see people that are legally binded that are very shitty to each other. You know what I mean? So it's like, for me, the concept of marriage overall, it's a wash. I don't know. Yes, no, I don't know how I feel about it. But the point is, hypothetically speaking, if I were to propose to a man, I feel like I would be proposing marriage to somebody who doesn't see the appeal in it. I feel like it would be me being a fan of musicals, inviting somebody who isn't a fan of musicals to go see a musical. Like, I just wouldn't do it. But I digress. Tim and Millie are in bed, and Tim is apologizing to Millie. He's like, I fucked up. I didn't realize what was going on. Like, I'm really sorry. Millie asked Tim, like, do you still want this relationship? And then Tim says, well, it's a little late now. Like, why the fuck would you say something like that to her? And so Millie is like, okay, if we're gonna break up, let's do it now. If we split up now, it'll be easier than if we were to do it later. And so now Tim is alarmed, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, do you want to get out of this relationship? And Millie is saying that she feels unsure because Tim has been distant lately. And it seems that his distance is circumstantial. We don't find out exactly why he's being distant, but Millie does imply that Tim is going through something that would cause him to be distant, which even then kind of still makes the proposal a little weird to me, because it's like, okay, even if it's like circumstantial and he's going through something, I just don't think then and now would have been the right time to propose. Millie expresses her concern that she doesn't know if they're still together because they love each other or just because they're used to each other. Although I feel like both can be true at the same time, I kind of get what she's saying, where it's like, are y'all even happy together? Do y'all even fuck with each other? Do y'all love each other? Or are y'all just afraid of separating after being together for so long? Because like nearly 10 years is some time. Obviously, if we've been married for like 50 fucking years and shit, that's gonna sound like no time at all, but you know, that's a good chunk of change. So Tim is apologizing, and then they start kissing. I said, oh shit, they're gonna have their sexual breakthrough, and then they don't. And so Tim kind of like brushes it off, and he's like, oh, I drank too much. They turn in opposite directions to go to sleep. They don't even cuddle or spoon or anything. I said, damn. So Tim is falling asleep, and then he hears Millie talking shit. And Millie is like, everyone knows that you need me more than I need you, and we all laugh about you. And Millie says resenting her doesn't make him less of a failure. And so Tim, of course, is like, what the fuck? Like, why would you say something like that to me? And so he turns to her, and then Millie, still facing away from Tim, still laying down, says, can you tell them to leave? I would have been like, bitch, who? When I tell you, I would have started shaking her and been like, wake up, you're talking in your sleep. First of all, like, I'm over here catching strays while you're in your fucking REM cycle, bitch. I don't appreciate that. And now you're saying creepy shit. I don't like it. And then Millie continues on, and she said, I can't sleep while they're staring at us. Nope. I wouldn't even have looked around the room if I was him. I would have just got up and left. And then, oh my God, Tim looks at the foot of the bed, and it's his parents. And it's not like in a cool way where it's like, oh my God, Mia Familia. It's in a creepy, what the fuck kind of way. And they're like bucket style. So then Tim goes to hide underneath the blanket, which I'm like, Tim, don't do that. Y'all are bucket style. Y'all appear to be sharing the same bed and the same blanket. Maybe don't do that. He looks under there, and his mom is there looking creepy. Her eyes are all glowy and shit, and I just don't like that. But apparently that whole bit was a nightmare, and he wakes up in their new house in the country. So Tim and Millie are unpacking in their new house, and Tim smells something. The smell leads him to a random ass light fixture in the hallway. He gets his bare fucking hand and starts digging around up there. He comes across a dead rat, and then he decides to get some bubble wrap to like protect his hand from that, and he grabs it, pulls it down. It's like a nest of rats together, and he throws the rats out, and Millie is asking him like, how the fuck did you know that was there? And I have the same question too, because like, damn, if him being a musician doesn't work out, maybe he could be an exterminator. That seemed like a very niche talent. So Millie is in the staff lounge at her new job, where she meets her coworker, Jamie. And he seems really, really nice. We find out that Jamie is actually her neighbor. And so Jamie is telling Millie like the woods and the trails near their houses are really good. So with this newfound information, Millie and Tim go check out the trails in the little wooded area. So as they're walking, Tim notices these bells hanging from the trees, and he assumes that they're like markers so they can keep track of their location. They decide to venture further into the woods, immediately get get lost. It's raining. Tim ends up falling in an underground cave. Millie runs to Tim to try to pull him up. He grabs her arm in such a way that felt like, bitch, I'm gonna pull you down with me. When I tell you, I would have like pried each of his fingers off. But they both end up falling into the cave, and once they get their bearings together, they check out their surroundings. They notice at the mouth of the cave, or the entrance where they fell in, there's a giant bell that looks very similar to the little ones that they've seen out in the woods. We also see that there are like church pews embedded in the walls. Other than that, the cave looks to be pretty empty, but Millie still describes it as feeling crowded. So Millie and Tim decide to wait out the storm and make camp in the cave. So they're getting cozy in the cave, and Millie and Tim are like, oh shit, like I'm real thirsty. Tim goes to look and see if they have any water, and they have a bottle of wine, and he tricks Millie into drinking the last of the water. So they notice that there's a water chasm in the cave, and then Tim drinks the fucking cave water. And if you think this is gonna have major consequences with lasting effects, you're right. We see some of these effects at the beginning of the movie, but I thought I'd leave you in suspense. So dim ass Tim drinks the water, and he gets like a little handful. He's like a little fucking dumbass chipmunk drinking from a fucking cave. And it's like, oh, the water's fine. And I'm like, you dumb. Sorry, let me collect myself. I just feel like on a number of levels this pisses me off because one, it's dark as fuck in there. You can't even see if the water is clear or okay to drink. And even if you could see, and even if the water did look clear, there's probably microorganisms in there that you can't fucking see, and you're over here drinking it like it's okay, and it's not. And then he tells Millie like, oh, give me the empty water bottle, fills it up, and then goes ahead and gets himself another glug. If I was Millie and that was my Tim, I would have been like, don't drink that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I would have physically. But we see the consequences of him drinking the water later. A little smack wasn't gonna hurt him. A little love tap wasn't gonna do no harm in saving him. And I'm like, oh my God, like y'all have been in there for 10 fucking minutes. Like you couldn't go without water for like just a little bit longer. And for me to drink random cave water, the situation would have to be motherfucking dire. It would have to be tea at the tree dome dire. If you don't understand that reference, that's the episode where SpongeBob went to go visit Sandy in her tree dome for the first time. And then SpongeBob realizes, oh shit, this bitch breathes H2O. Hold the H2. I gotta get the fuck out of here. I need some water. I need it. Tim and Millie are in the cave and they're sitting at the fire that they've made and they're drinking their little wine, and Tim reveals how he knew that those rats were in the light fixture. Tim proceeds to tell Millie this horrific story from his childhood. So one day, Tim's father said that he could smell something foul coming from his room and tells Tim to clean his room. Tim can't smell anything in his room, but he cleans the room anyways. Tim and his father kind of have this back and forth until one day his father gets so angry, so upset, he tears his room apart. Tim goes to school, comes back. His father has a wicked grin on his face, as Tim explains, and he's like, I found the smell. Apparently, there was a rat nesting in his light fixture, and every time he turned on the light, it would heat up and it would cook the rat. Because it cooked the rat gradually and over time, Tim didn't notice the smell, and he was just breathing it in that whole time. He was like nose blind, like in the Febreze commercials. Millie is shocked that she hadn't heard the story before, and Tim said that he only remembered it when he found his parents. So one day Tim goes to visit his parents, and he finds his mom in their bedroom with her husband, his father's deceased body. And when he opened the door, the mom was smiling at him, and it seemed that she had, I guess, like a mental break where she couldn't really process the death of her husband. So night after night, she was going into the bedroom and sleeping next to her husband. And I know for Tim, that must have been like traumatic as fuck. Some time has gone by. Tim and Millie have fallen asleep in the cave. The cave is all windy and it's all rumbly and shit. And Tim wakes up and he starts like, kind of like breathing very specifically. Like he's like taking in deep breaths and notices that the cave, like the walls of the cave are like breathing and fluctuating as he breathes. He looks over at Millie and she is wide-eyed and hyperventilating. And then like there's hands that come up from behind him and grab him. But apparently Tim was just having another nightmare and Millie is waking him up. And I'm like, bro, his nightmares are too fucking much. Like at this point, dude, just stay awake. Just don't sleep, shit. So Tim and Millie get up and they see that their legs are kind of like stuck together. Tim dismisses it as mildew, but it is very painful for them to separate. So they climb out the cave, they go back home, and Millie is asking Tim for a back massage. So he starts massaging her back, and at first it looks very good, looks very deep tissue. Tim is getting really into it, which is all you can ask for from a back massager. He's so into it that he doesn't realize that he's hurting Milli. So Milli is like, hey, what the fuck, you're hurting me, and he snaps out of it. Milli is kind of looking at Tim and she's like, okay, you don't look so good. Go get in the shower. I'm gonna go into town and get some groceries. So Tim is in the shower. As soon as Milli drives off, he starts like zoning out again. Eyes are rolling to the back of his head and shit. While Milli is driving, every time she makes a turn on the road, Tim's body is forced in whatever direction that she's turning in. And mind you, he's not out on the road, okay? He's in a small shower. So when she turns left, his body like slams into the shower wall. Tim injures himself pretty badly, so he goes to a doctor. The doctor kind of explains it as him having an anxiety attack and his body physically responding. And because Tim had a physical response, the doctor prescribes him with a muscle relaxant. So even if he's like mentally distressed and having anxiety, his body won't be as physically responsive to it. And it seems that Tim has told his doctor about him and Milli's little underground cave excursion, and his doctor is telling him that he's lucky that they made it out okay because there's a couple that went missing not too long ago. And for their little town, that was like a big news. There was like a search party and everything, but they were never found. So this piques Tim's interest, so he goes home and starts doing research on the missing couple. He comes across some articles, he comes across their social media. Tim kind of fills Milli in on the missing couple, and as he's doing so, there's a knock at the door. It's Milli's coworker, Jamie. It seems that Jamie has brought them a bottle of wine to welcome them into the neighborhood, and Milli insists that he comes inside and joins them. And honestly, I couldn't imagine having that much of a social butterfly of a spouse, because why are we inviting this man into our home? Okay, we have rats in our fixtures and shit. Tim is having fucking anxiety attacks, throwing his body around and shit. Like, let's hold off on having guests right now. The three of them are sitting down having dinner, drinking their wine, and Milli and Tim are telling Jamie about what happened in the woods and, you know, them falling into that cave. And so Tim is telling Jamie that he kind of got cult vibes from the cave because, you know, there was a church bell, there were church pews, and now it's underground in this cave. That looks creepy. It's a creepy ass cave. Jamie confirms that there was a small chapel out there, and it was like a church for, as he put it, like new age hippies. And he says that their congregation thinned out since the church collapsed. Jamie is like complimenting the food, because like I said, they're having dinner. And he's like, oh yes, Tim actually cooked. And she was like, that's why I don't know how to cook. Like I never had to learn because he knows how to do it. Tim and Milli start making awkward jabs at each other. She's like, oh yeah, like just how he doesn't have his license and I have my license, he never learned how to drive. Then Tim makes like a kind of comment where it's like, oh yeah, you get a personal chef and I'm trapped here. I said, ooh, y'all sound like y'all got problems. But Jamie kind of lightens the mood and he's like, oh my God, it sounds like y'all complete each other. I said, that's one way of looking at it. I was like, that's one interpretation, Jamie, go ahead. So Jamie leaves and Tim is kind of teasing Milli and is like, oh, like I think he has a crush on you and I think you got a crush on him. And Milli is like joking along with him. And as soon as she closes proximity, Tim zones out again and kisses Milli. So they start making out and I said, here it is. They're gonna do it. They're gonna have their sexual awakening here in their home. Milli like goes to pull away from Tim and their lips are like, their bottom lip is like kind of fused together. And so when they separate, kind of like similar to how their legs separated in the cave, it's painful for them. And so Milli is like, ow, you bit me. And then Milli just lets him have it. It's very clear that Milli is frustrated and she tells Tim like, you're giving me mixed signals. And Tim is trying to explain that there's something strange going on with him. We know this to be true. And we know this is because he drank from the motherfucking cave. But Milli doesn't want to hear any parts of it. She's like, oh, you're coming up with excuses. And she's like, if you don't want to fuck me, just say that. And then Milli goes upstairs. And when I tell you this is what I motherfucking hate in like thrillers and horror movies and shit, when there's something going on and it's happening to one person and that one person is trying to tell the person that they're with, their friend, their family member, somebody, they're trying to tell them like, hey, there's some shit going on, and they don't want any parts of it. They don't even want to fucking hear it. And I'm glad that their sparse sex life has finally become a verbal conversation between the two, but I'm just mad that it looks like this. And I get that Milli is frustrated with their lack of intimacy. I just don't like how she's necessarily communicating it in this particular moment. And I'm just like, damn, your homegirl, her homegirl being Kath, being aware that you're dissatisfied in your sexual relationship with your man before your man knows is a lot. That just seems a little strange to me. I can understand maybe wanting to confide in your friend or your best friend or whoever the fuck about things that are going on in your relationship so you can kind of process your feelings and then maybe even game plan on how to approach that in a productive way. But this is the first time we see her bringing this up to Tim and it just doesn't look like a productive conversation. And I always say, if there's a situation that you're in any type of relationship and there's a feeling within you that's connected to a fuse of frustration, meaning if that nerve is hit too many times or if a certain thing is pushed on too many times, or in her case not enough, and it feels like at some point you're gonna let it out in a way that is not very productive then it's like, I feel like I wish he would have addressed it much sooner. I'm pretty sure Millie thought she was fine with the situation and was fine giving Tim grace in that regard. But then, you know, that's not what happened. She kind of like snapped off a little bit. And I feel like when you feel yourself in the moment about to pop off on somebody, it's good to just stop. Walk away and then readdress it when you're calmer. And this is coming from a reformed crash out. I remember one time my ex Steven pissed me off so bad, real bad, and I had to wait to address it. Otherwise, I was gonna hurt his feelings. I was gonna hurt his mama's feelings and his daddy's feelings too, because why the fuck did they raise you like this? So fast forward, it's a little later on in the night, Tim and Millie are in bed, and Millie is like kind of half asleep, and she tells Tim like, hey, you're laying on my hair. But Tim doesn't adjust and he doesn't move, so Millie turns on the light, looks at him. Tim unconsciously is just guzzling, just deep throating her hair. So of course Millie wakes up like, what the fuck? Tim is now awake and is like, what the fuck? Because now he's choking on Millie's hair. They struggle for a minute and then eventually they separate. They don't talk about it immediately, which would not have been my situation. We would have talked about it right then and there. I would have been like, what the fuck was that? Why did you just do that? I used Donna's recipe in my hair. It literally smells like sweet potato pie. So I'll be like, I get why you would smell it and think, I'm a little hungry, but actually doing it is crazy. So the next morning, Tim is preparing to go back to the city for his rehearsals. Like I said, he plans on going on tour with Luke, Millie's brother. And so Millie initially agreed to drop him off at the train station, but now she's having second thoughts because, yeah, last night was weird as fuck. He guzzled her hair. And Tim was like, I was unconscious. Like, I wasn't even awake. And I'm like, conscious, unconscious. Like, we still need to talk about that because what the fuck? And Millie doesn't want him to go. I would be like, you need to leave, actually. I'd be like, I'm taking your ass to the train station. I don't know if I'm gonna be here to pick you up upon your return. Stay in the city. Nonetheless, Millie drops Tim off at the train station. As soon as Millie drives off, Tim is down for the motherfucking count. He does not look good at all. He looks disoriented and he just doesn't look in good shape. He's like sweating and it's not great. And Tim deadass like wanders off. He leaves his guitar, his luggage, and everything at the train station and just wanders off. Millie is at work, aka school, and she's on her lunch break and she's video chatting with Kath and is basically catching her up and telling her all the shit that's been going on since her and Tim have moved there. We see this again with Millie and Kath when it comes to having conversations regarding Tim, where Millie is defending Tim and his character and Kath is kind of like challenging that. And she's telling Kath how on their first date she mentioned that she liked the Spice Girls, and on their second date he gifted her a Spice Girl album on vinyl, which is very sweet. That's a very nice gesture. But then Kath is like, okay, but that was nearly 10 years ago. What is he doing now? That's romantic. That is an excellent point, but I feel like she should be having that conversation with Tim, or she should be communicating with Tim like, hey, where's the razzle? Where's the dazzle in this bitch? I don't see it anywhere. I have mixed feelings about Kath's character. I'm sure she's trying to come from a good place, and I know she probably just wants the best for her friend. I get that Tim and Millie's circumstance, you know what I mean? You know, Millie is supporting them financially and he doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't really seem to have much of a career. So it's like, I can get it from that perspective. And when it comes to like the financial dynamic of a couple, I feel like to each their own, you know, whether or not she is the one carrying the finances or he's the one carrying the finances or their dual income, I feel like wasn't a super huge issue for them, or at least not for Millie. It seemed that Millie's concerns more so revolve around them being complacent in their relationship. But I would say that their financial dynamic does seem to be an insecurity of Tim's, but I don't think it's like bothering Millie to that extent, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I kind of just feel like Kath is like low-key working overtime to convince Millie that Tim is trash. I do think Kath has a point though to say like, okay, you know, he did this grand gesture X amount of years ago, but what is he doing now? Like, it's like I get the thought process of that because I feel like sometimes I see people stay in relationships for way too long based on how things felt and how things were at the start of the relationship. But I do feel that their current dynamic is circumstantial. They should look at what's recently changed that could have potentially impacted their current dynamic. For example, Tim finding his parents in their bedroom the way that he did. Speak of the devil, Millie looks outside of her classroom window and Tim is wandering around the schoolyard. So Millie rushes to him, drags him to the restroom, and is like, what the fuck are you doing here? And my guy Tim is fiending. He's like, I'm thirsty all over. He's like, I need you. They start kissing and Millie folds almost immediately and then pulls him into one of the stalls and they start hunching. And I can't even be happy that they're having this sexual revelation. One, because we know that Tim is under the influence of the cave water. And two, they're literally in a stall at a school with children in the children's restroom. It's a boys' restroom. Like, y'all can have like I get that Tim is fiending and shit because of the cave water and shit, but I'm like, Millie, take his ass somewhere else with that shit. Like, you're on your break. Go find your car, drive y'all to y'all's house and do that shit there. It just gave me so much anxiety. I was like, oh my God, like I literally couldn't even watch because I had to pause because I was like, bro, I already know what the fuck's gonna happen. I was like, I already know what the fuck's gonna happen, but let me not get ahead of myself. So Tim and Millie are in the bathroom stall and they complete, so to speak. And I'm like, okay, thank God. Hurry up and get the fuck out of there before somebody walks in. And when they go to separate, they're stuck. They're stuck together. Millie looks down and sees two children-sized feet right outside the stall. The student right outside the fucking stall. I don't know if the student realized what was going on in that stall, but he freaks out and he runs out. Now, Millie and Tim are in a full panic trying to separate so Tim can get the fuck out of there. And really, they both don't need to be in there because Millie is definitely in the boys' restroom. What the fuck? And then they show Tim's member. It's stretching. Tim's member it's stretching. So Millie covers Tim's mouth and just rips them apart, rips it like a band-aid, separates from him. I can only assume that it was like really fucking painful. Have you ever had like a pain where you hear like a ringing in your ears? There's a ringing going on. Tim is like shuddering in pain. And then we hear somebody walk into the restroom. So quickly Millie tells Tim to stand up on the toilet so you can't see his feet. So then she walks out. It's Jamie there with the student that had walked in previously. And Jamie's looking at Millie like, what the fuck is going on? Millie is at a loss for words. She's probably in pain because her punani was ripped from the inside out. And she's basically just standing there staring at Jamie. And Jamie's like, this is like the little boys' restroom. What the fuck are you doing in here? Millie is saved by the bell. Really, she's saved by the blood. Jamie sees blood dripping down her leg and is like, oh, her Aunt Flo is in town. She probably needed to run to the nearest restroom. And so he tells her, like, next time, like, try to make it to a staff restroom. You got your period. That's none of my motherfucking business. I'm out this bitch. So Jamie is walking out and Tim steps down from the toilet a moment too early and Jamie sees his feet. And Millie sees Tim's feet. But Jamie doesn't say anything and Millie doesn't say anything. Jamie just walks out. And so Millie takes her and Tim home and she's ultra pissed at Tim. And she's full on blaming him for them having sex in the children's restroom. And she's like, I could have gotten arrested. I could have gotten fired. And I'm like, girl, now I can get mad at Tim for showing up to her job unannounced, but you busted it wide open in that bathroom stall, okay? You participated consensually. I don't want to hear nothing about it. And so Tim was like, oh, like I didn't make you do anything. And she was like, oh, we haven't had sex in months. And then you came through. So like, yeah, you did make me. And I'm like, girl, no. Like, it's like, I get her being excited. Like, oh my God, my man finally wants to f me. Like, okay, girl, I hear you. But like, you couldn't have waited? Like, as somebody who's been absent for years, like, girl, it wouldn't have taken nothing but a second to be like, okay, I'm gonna see you when I get home. Or, oh, okay, I'm on my break, let's drive home. Like, you kind of, like, participated in that shit going down then and there. Like, please don't. And not to mention, we know that Tim is under the influence of the cave water. I'm like, Millie, what is your excuse? And the floodgates open. Millie is pissed and she just starts letting it go. She's like, I sacrificed so much for you to live your impossible dream. I'm assuming his dream of being a musician. And Tim's like, but I moved here for you. And Millie's like, you're not trapped here, leave. And he's like, I can't. Tim is trying to explain that there's something wrong with him. But Millie walks off and tells Tim, like, I'm gonna go clean up your mess. And we can only assume she's gonna go try to talk to Jamie because he definitely seen Tim's feet under that stall. And so Tim asks Millie, like, do you want me to come with you? And Millie's like, I can't make every decision for you. I'm not your mother, even though I'm starting to feel like her. Jamie is like, well, what is that supposed to mean? I'm thinking she's gonna be like, I provide for you financially. I pack your lunch and shit. I drive you around and shit. Like, I thought she was gonna name things that a parent would do for a child. No, she doesn't. Millie says, it feels like I'm living with something dead. And we know like the conversation that he had with her in the cave regarding his parents and shit. So we know that was shade. That was shade. And it was unnecessary shade. Like, what zodiac sign do you think Millie is? Because that was fucking crazy. Why the fuck would you? It was just so uncalled for. Because why the fuck would you say something like that? So Millie walks over to Jamie's place and she's apologizing. And I feel like she's low-key trying to fish for what he's seen in the restroom. And so she's kind of like addressing it without really addressing it. She's not like, I'm sorry that you caught me and Tim fucking in the restroom. She's just kind of like, yeah, I'm just a little embarrassed, like trying to fish for what he's seen. And he's like, oh my gosh, feminine problems or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, he like kind of dismisses it. So Jamie notices that Millie looks a little distressed and that she's been crying. And she's like, yes, me and Tim just got in an argument. So he invites her inside and fixes her a glass of water. So while he's doing that, Millie kind of looks around. She notices a photograph of two men. And then she sits down and drinks her glass of water. and then proceeds to confide in Jamie about her and Tim. So Jamie asks Milli, like, do you love him? And she's like, yeah, like, I don't remember who I even was before him. And she's worried that they've become complacent in their relationship. And Jamie is like, oh, well, you know, complacency can also be harmony. And he goes on to explain that Plato wrote that the ancient Greeks believed that we were created with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 faces. But Zeus feared our power and split us into 2 parts, forever searching and longing to be paired with our other half. And Jamie tells Milli that if she found that in Tim, not to be so quick to let that go. And Milli kind of receives that. She kind of changes the subject a little bit, and she asks Jamie if he lived there alone. And Jamie is like, yeah, when we first moved here, there was 2 of us. And he explains that him and his partner separated for some time, and while they were separated, he felt liberated. And he says although he was liberated, he was miserable without his man. And on that note, Jamie is like, oh, let me show you our wedding tape. But then Milli looks out of his window and Tim is there just standing there all creepy like. And so she's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So she leaves. Milli is pissed and Tim is apologizing. He's like, I'm sorry, like I couldn't help it. Because like I said, we know that he's fiending from that cave water. Tim goes to hold Milli's hand and she looks like relaxed, like she looks satiated. So later on that night, Tim and Milli are home. Milli is in bed. Tim takes his medication and then he goes downstairs into the office and continues doing research on the missing couple. So Tim is looking at the last social media post that the couple made and he gets the coordinates from the photo and sees that it's not far from them at all. He goes back and looks at the photos and he sees the same bells that him and Milli seen while they were out on the trail. And once he realizes this, the internet crashes and there's a bang on the office door. And it appears to be Milli, but all we can see is like kind of like a grainy silhouette of her. And Tim is like calling out to her. She's not answering. And it seems that whenever Tim moves, she moves. He gets on his tippy toes outside. Milli is hovering. So Tim opens the office door. Milli falls on top of him and she's like kind of in a trance. She's kind of like gyrating a little bit. So he slaps her to wake her up and her nose is bleeding. She's like, what the fuck is going on? So Tim and Milli go sit at the kitchen table to have like a debrief and Milli's like, okay, maybe I was having a seizure. And Tim's like, what the fuck? You've never had a seizure. There's something else going on here. And I think it has something to do with that missing couple and that cave. I think whatever happened to them is happening to us. They were on the same trail as us and there's something going on here. And so Tim suspects that whatever's going on with them is stronger at night because their mind is unconscious, but their body kind of just like has a mind of its own. And so he's like, okay, like when we woke up in the cave and we were stuck together and when we had sex and I couldn't remove my peen from your punani. And of course, Milli has an excuse for everything that Tim is saying. And I'm like, now Milli is really finna start pissing me off. And Tim is like over here like, okay, like you don't believe me, but like let's experiment, like put your hand up against my hand and let's see what happens. And she won't do it. And Milli stands up and she's like, I'm not doing that. And I think you should go sleep in the guest bedroom tonight. And he's like, yeah, okay, yes, I agree. Because we need to keep our distance right now because there's some bullshit going on. So then Milli goes to walk out the room and she freezes and she can't. And Tim was like, see, you can't leave, can you? He's like, we've imprinted on each other in the cave. There's something going on. And then Milli is like, my parents are coming for lunch on Sunday and I don't want you here. And I don't want you. I said, damn. So Tim and Milli go to their separate quarters. They go to sleep and Tim wakes up to his body dragging itself towards Milli's room. And so Tim wakes up, sees what's going on, and is trying to stop himself. And then Milli's unconscious body is trying to make its way towards Tim in the most unhinged and creepy fashion. She's doing like back bends and shit to get to him. And ultimately, their hands end up meeting because, like I said, it's like a force pulling them together and they start merging together. Like skin underneath skin and bone and stuff. And what I can appreciate as somebody who is very fucking squeamish, I really appreciate that it didn't look extremely gory. Like it almost looked like it could have felt good in like a disgusting, painful kind of way. So then Tim, fucking genius that he is, you know, he's redeeming himself now a little bit from drinking the suspicious ass cave water. He's like, ooh, let's take the muscle relaxant. So Milli like is struggling to grab the pills. They open the bottle together and they start taking the pills. And he's like, nah. He's like, let's start smashing them and snorting them so it gets in our system faster. And so they're over here eating these pills. They're snorting these pills. The medication seems to be helping. And so Tim covers his toesy woesies with his sweatpants and pushes his feet up against Milli's feet. And they kind of push apart from each other to separate. And of course, they were in there popping all sorts of pills and stuff. Tim passes out. So Tim starts waking up and it's morning and he finds himself restrained to a chair in the kitchen. So Milli is up and she's like kind of sitting on top of him and she's like, oh shit, you're awake. So apparently Tim and Milli's arms are still connected by some skin. And so Milli has a little electric handsaw And she's like, I'm gonna handle this shit, which is like fucking crazy. Like, there's no way mentally I would ever be prepared to do some shit like that. It's like the alternative is that they fucking merge together, but shit, I don't think I could be the one to do it. If I was Tim, I would have been like, knock my ass back out and wake me when this shit is done. And so Millie is fully prepared to do it. Tim is like, no, what the fuck? And she's like, if we don't split now, it'll be harder to do later, which is kind of funny because she said that earlier in the movie. And now she's saying it in the worst possible context. Millie apologizes to Tim for not believing him before, and then she does it. She detaches them from each other. After it's all said and done, Tim and Millie are bandaged up. They're sitting in two separate parts of the kitchen eating leftovers. And Tim realizes that there's only 2 pills left. Millie is like, okay, we need to go to the hospital. And Tim is like, no, we need answers. We need to go back to the cave. And Millie is like, bitch, I just sawed our arms apart from each other. Like, we need to go to the hospital. Which I'm Team Millie right here, right now. Because it's like, I get that there's like a bigger thing going on here. But I'm like, I don't fucking care. We'll go to NASA to figure this shit out before we go exploring in a fucking cave to try to figure this out. Like, I'm not going back there. Millie realizes that she left her car keys at Jamie's, so she's like, fuck. So Millie leaves to go to Jamie's, and as soon as Millie walks off, Tim runs inside and gets gear to go down to the fucking cave. So Millie goes to Jamie's house. She rings his doorbell, which is a literal bell, which we see is one of the bells that was in the fucking woods. So alarms are ringing here, okay? Jamie was already giving me like so-so vibes, but now they're on 10. I'm on high alert. Don't like that she's here at Jamie's place. Jamie is not answering, so Millie just walks right in. And I know she was desperate for those keys, because walking into somebody's house like that is kind of crazy. Millie is inside, she's searching for her keys when she hears a video playing in the next room. And it's a video of the old church before it collapsed. So it's very clear Jamie has some sort of part in whatever the fuck is going on here. The video continues, and we see that it's actually a wedding, and it's 2 grooms, and it's the same 2 men that Millie's seen a picture of in Jamie's home. It seems like the congregation or the flock of the church joined the 2 men down in the cave, and it seems like the church was built on top of the underground cave. So they go down there, the 2 men cut their arms open, and their heads are submerged in the cave water, the same cave water that Tim was guzzling. The 2 men kiss, the video ends, and then Jamie is creepily standing behind Millie as she watches the video. He's holding her keys, and he very calmly is like, don't worry, like, I'll give these back to you, and then puts them in his back pocket. Like, are you gonna give them back to me, or am I gonna have to fuck you up? And he's like, oh, we were scared at first. Everybody was scared at first. It's such a great gift to become whole. I said, oh shit. You look at the fucking photos, and you look at the 2 men in the fucking tape. Point to which one is Jamie for me. Point to which, you can't, because it's both of them. They're both Jamie fused together. Jamie is like, this is the hardest part, you just gotta push through. And Millie is like, no, ew, I don't want this, what the fuck? And Jamie is like, it's already happening, and you wouldn't like the alternative, and I know what you're thinking. What's the alternative? We cut to Tim, he's in the cave, and he finds the missing couple. And they have fused together very improperly. So cut back to Jamie and Millie, and Jamie slices the fuck out of Millie's arm, and he's like, oh, it'll be better this way, like, it kind of helps the process. So Millie hits him because what the fuck, why are we doing this? And she must have hit Jamie hard as fuck, because now Jamie has 2 faces, and he's still preaching to Millie. He's like, you'll be so warm. So then Millie runs home. Cut to Tim. Like I said, he found the missing couple, and it's giving very much Monstro and Lissazu. And Monstro is over here asking for help, and it almost looks like the boyfriend of the couple died, because on his half of their monster body, there's a knife in his neck. And when the monster is asking for help, it sounds like a woman's voice. So Tim grabs a knife, he like cuts off their fingers, which is like cruel. Like at that point, just take them out. Just take them out. Like, I feel like they're done. Tim climbs out of the cave. He runs home. And Tim and Millie are approaching the house at the same time. And they're still trying to maintain distance. And now they're both up to speed. And so Millie's like, I know what's going on. Tim is like, I know what's going on. And it's not long before their bodies are being forced to each other. And it's like they're fighting to remain separated. Tim lets go. He tells Millie to let go. And so Tim tells Millie, like, I know how to stop it. But first, he gets down on one knee. And he does a little fake ass, no ring ass proposal. He's like apologizing to Millie that he hadn't proposed sooner. And he is saying that he was worried that he wouldn't remember who he was without her. He was like, I knew who I was without you before you. I was miserable. I was alone. I was incomplete. And then he says that he loves her. Millie is like, oh my gosh, I love you. And Tim stands up and he tells Millie, like, close your eyes. Pulls out a knife and he's like fully prepared to sacrifice himself. And Tim explains that this will all end if one of them is dead. Realizing what he's about to do, Millie is like, oh shit, don't do that. You're gonna be fine. And then Tim realizes that Millie is bleeding out. Just as Tim realizes that Millie is bleeding out, she collapses. So Millie is essentially dying and she's telling Tim to run away, but he doesn't. He carries her inside, lays her on the couch. Millie wakes up and she looks like she's not bleeding out. Like in her face, you can tell she looks a lot less pale. I said, what the fuck is going on? And it seems that Tim has merged his hand on her wound so she wouldn't bleed out. Millie is disappointed by this and she was like, I was trying to let you go. And Tim's like, did you want to let me go? And she's like, nah. I said, aw. I was like, y'all are so cute and all weird and shit, all merged together and shit, you fucking weirdos. So Tim pulls out the Spice Girls vinyl that he gifted to Millie all those years ago and puts it on the record. As they dance to the living room to Spice Girls' To Become One, they agree to merge together and they start merging and it looks horrific. So Sunday comes around, we see that the place has been cleaned up and we see that the dining table has been set for 3 just as Millie's parents pull up for their planned lunch. Millie's mom rings their bell and it's a literal fucking bell. They have the same church bell up from, you know, the hippy dippy church cult people. And we get to see Tim and Millie's final merged form, Tilly, Mim, and then the movie ends. I feel like they cut that scene a little too short because I needed to see Millie's parents' reaction. Because I'm like, how do you even begin to explain that? And honestly, if me and my person merged together physically, which one, that sounds fucking horrific. But if that were the case, I would want to announce that to everybody in one sitting. I'm like, I'm not going to keep telling this story over and over again. Like, what does traveling look like for them? I'm like, do they have... Are they going to get a new social security number? Are they just like, okay, we're just going to use your name and your credentials and shit to travel? Like, do they have a designated partner for that? How does that work? If we're taking the movie, like, super fucking literally, this is fucking terrifying. The thought of, like, fusing with somebody else it just bothers me. I just hate that. I understand that the alternative was the missing couple and how they turned out. So it's like, I guess if you think of the 2 options that have been presented to us, which is, okay, either you merge harmoniously or you struggle merge and end up like the missing couple. You know what I mean? Obviously, not the missing couple. But at the same time, I just feel like I wouldn't easily accept merging like that. I would like, we gotta exhaust every possible option that there is. Like I said, I'm like, we gotta go to NASA. We gotta go somewhere. We gotta find a scientist and figure this shit out. Because I feel like if there's a magical merging chasm in an underground cave, there's gotta be an anti-merging magical chasm. You know what I mean? I feel like there's got to be something that could reverse this shit. Somewhere on the planet, it has to exist somewhere. Where the fuck is Zeus at to separate us? Like, situation is so terrifying to me that I'm like, okay, I feel kind of relieved that I'm like, okay, I would never be in that situation because I would never drink out of a mysterious cave like that. You have Millie who didn't drink directly from the cave, or at least I believe that Millie didn't drink directly from the cave. I think that she got her hit, she got her dosage of the cave water from Jamie when she went to go visit and do damage control. Because before then, anytime she was unconscious, her body wasn't doing crazy shit. Like, she wasn't guzzling and deep throating Tim's hair in the middle of the night unconsciously. She didn't have a reaction until after she visited Jamie. I know that Jamie knew about their little cave excursion, but still, why the fuck would he give her that water? And I'm like, what exactly was the church's mission? Because now you're about to piss me the fuck off. Was it the kind of church where it's like, we personally like to merge together and shit? You know, y'all don't like, you know, if you don't like to merge together, sucks to be you, bitch. Or are they the kind like, you gotta trust me, like, come drink this Kool-Aid? Like, what is it? Because why the fuck would Jamie give Millie that fucking water? If I had mystical, magical cave water Kool-Aid, I'd be like, hey, my water does something different from your water, I'm sure. Do you want some? I'm not just gonna give it to you blindly. Like, what the fuck is that? I just wonder if Tim and Millie didn't tell Jamie about the cave, if he would have given Millie the water. Like, but I'm wondering if his thought process was like, okay, y'all already told me about the cave. You already told me that Tim drank from the chasm. I'm just gonna help move things along. I wonder now if Tilly and Jamie are friends now. Like, are they like, okay, all 4 of us, that's now 2 of us, are all cool and we're all friends. Like, I can only assume that to be the case because they have that same little bell that Jamie had. And I wonder, once Millie's parents make it inside, if Tilly's gonna be like, you want some water? Y'all want some water? Y'all wanna be intertwined? Y'all wanna merge? Y'all wanna be together forever and ever? In divine flesh? I feel like symbolically the movie's representation of codependency is neat. I quite liked it being depicted this way. And y'all know me, I fucking hate body horror, but I feel like it wasn't too gory for me. Cause I get it, the fear of losing your individual identity when you commit to somebody is a possibility. You get comfortable with someone, and when you're with them long enough, your lives intertwine in such a way that if that's disrupted, you know, that could be a very scary feeling. And thinking back towards the end of the movie when Tim is like fake proposing to Millie and he's telling her that he was worried that he wouldn't remember who he was before they were together, really hit. Especially if you think about the context of his parents, you've seen that his mom was so shaken up by the loss of her partner and the idea of being without him that she kind of had like this big mental break. I think that this had Tim shook in more ways than just seeing that horrific scene, but also coming to the realization like, damn, like she lost her partner and completely shut the fuck down. And that's something that's very scary to think about, like not just falling in love and finding someone, but getting so used to them being there that should they leave, should they perish, you know, that shit's gonna fucking suck. And so I feel like maybe that's what was preventing Tim from fully locking in with Millie. I do think that something else that the movie speaks on, complacency, is also an interesting and a scary thing too. Like what Millie said towards the beginning of the movie, like, or do we love each other, or are we just used to each other? Like people that remain in relationships because that's what's comfortable. Their lives have intertwined so much to the point where even though they don't love each other and even though they're not possibly soulmates, staying in that relationship probably feels better than leaving it and kind of disrupting what you're comfortable with or what you're used to. And that's something that I definitely resonate with. I feel like, especially like in my earlier relationships, for me, it was like battling where I'm like, I know this person isn't my person, but leaving felt fucking terrible. And I was like, bitch, this person isn't your soulmate. You're just comfortable and scared of change. Do better. And then I did better. And I know that's easier said than done, especially with like relationships and couples that have been together for like hella like 30 years and 50 years and shit. It's like, I get it. But if you're feeling complacent or dissatisfied, don't stay just because that's what's comfortable. But yes, that's all that I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I hope that if you get stuck in a cave that you don't drink that cave water. You think if you run that water through a Brita? Never mind. Okay, bye.